as a matter of fact. But I did go to Liverpool College of Art. That's where I studied painting, actually, first of all, when the college was in Hope Street. And it was a fantastic place. I was very lucky to have been there. So, and I spent a lot of time in Liverpool. I presume that you're all from Liverpool. Is this correct?
Yes.
Nod your head or
Yeah.
shake your head.
No, just outside of Liverpool.
Where are they? But are you,
Yeah,
you're the
Southport.
Liverpool? Oh well,
The northwest.
the posh part of.
Yeah.
No, okay, cool. Well, it's an extraordinary city, and I go there still, and I like it very much. And I've always found the vibrance of the place incredible, and its cultural depth really extraordinary. Its historic depth, its social depth, and so on. I used to work on the buses in Liverpool. Actually, you'd be pleased to know. This is what happens to filmmakers. You end up working on the buses. I was on the Speak to Pearhead route, actually, Martin. That's a place for you to. That's a bus for you to ride at 11 o'clock at night. But
Remember
nevertheless,
the number of the bus.
well, I know I was on an 83, I think, and I was. On, am I right on that? I don't know if
It'll
anybody.
be the 82 now.
It's 82. Well,
Yeah, there you go.
anyway, you'll be 82 then. Well done. Well done. Yeah, no. Anyway, that's all beside the point. So Martin's dropped me in on that by telling you I'm a descendant of the great city itself. Anyway, I did like it. I actually started making highly experimental films when I was at the art college. I had no intention of being a filmmaker, none whatsoever. And then I went on, in fact, to the Slade. I went to do a postgraduate at the Slade, and there was a filmmaking course, but it wasn't. It was more a film history course and an analysis course, which I'm eternally grateful that I was on. And I would advise everybody really to get a grasp of the historical precedents that have occurred in cinema before, if you're interested in operating in this area. That particular course that I was on was run by a man called Thorold Dickinson. And Thorold Dickinson, some of you may have heard of him. He was a great director, actually, from the 1930s and 40s and 50s. But he had the strange position of being head of British war propaganda in the Second World War. And there are many stories about Thorold basically just arguing with Churchill about the validity of certain films, and particularly propaganda films, and the effect or non-effect that these things might have. And for those that are interested, anyway, he ran a course, and he basically showed us 3 films a week from world cinema, not from something you could just go around the corner and see. It had to be from world cinema. And in those days, they were able to show 35mm prints, which is really quite extraordinary when you think about it now. But they had the facility to do that. And I sat through a whole term of French cinema, a whole term of German cinema, a whole term of Russian cinema, Japanese cinema, blah, blah, blah. And in a way, a lot of that sunk in very, very deep. A lot of the directors were able to come, by the way, including the great French director Renoir, who came and showed us material, showed us his film, and then talked and even walked around the studios and talked to us about our strange experiments that I was then doing and others were doing. Well, that kind of thing, that kind of course is first of all, be incredibly expensive to run nowadays. And people don't have 35mm prints or projection facilities. And so we have to sort of adapt to new conditions and so on. But anyway, out of that, I then started to work with a number of theatre directors. One of them was a very major director at the time, a man called Tadios Kantor. If you know theatre, you might know him. If you don't, it's irrelevant really. But I mean, there's a great Polish theatre director, experimental theatre, came over to the United Kingdom and did some works in Edinburgh and some works in London. I don't know if he went to Liverpool, but he did some major works. And I ended up working with him, and I was sort of part of his. Well, I made a film with him actually, And then I was also part of his group for a while. So I can say I was actually trained in a certain kind of theatrical performance by Tadeusz Kantor. World famous. There are many tributes made to him, and I sometimes go to them. One was in Krakow recently, in Poland. Anyway, so then I've got this merger of different influences: a fine art influence, the Manchester-Liverpool influence, which is pretty powerful, the influence of this theatre kind of situation, and the influence of almost classical filmmaking. And these things were merging in my mind, but I had no idea. I was very young, and I would have found it very difficult to have said who I was and what I was doing. I would have found it very difficult. However, having made a number of very short experimental works, they were starting to be shown. And I was part of some quite big exhibitions, one at the Tate, actually, in London. And from there, on the back of that, I was able to get some finance, and I financed a picture called Resistance. It was a feature film. I was working with historians, and I was fascinated in dealing with different areas of activity, not just I want to be a filmmaker or whatever. So I was working with some historians about French history, and I was working with some philosophical figures, major philosophical figures at the time, about the nature of time and the nature of cinema itself and so on. And this ended up in a picture called Resistance, which, to my surprise as much as anything else, did win a major film festival. And on the back of that, other things opened up. There's a very short trajectory of how I ended up making, in the end, some rather large-scale motion pictures. I was always skeptical about the thing. I wasn't sure I liked all the people I met in the film world. I found a lot of them very pretentious, and I don't think it was really me. In fact, in many ways, I used to not say I was a filmmaker. I used to say I was an artist, because I found, and also the issue of celebrity and so on, I still find totally nauseous. So, though I've worked with a lot. Anyway, that's a sort of thing of where I came from. So there are some things being written about it at the moment, and there's a new archive being set up of work that I've done over the last 40 to 50 years, and that's all being compiled now. It's out of my hands. I leave it with the curators to do that. Imperative, I think, to survive is, as both Darwin and Freud said, adaptation is the key. It's actually, as far as they were concerned, the signature of creative intelligence. Adaptation. Well, sorry, was that? Oh no, if you had a question, you certainly chuck it in. Can you imagine when I began making films, digital didn't exist. Okay, so I was working with analog. I was working with analog cameras. I was working with Nagras and things that you probably won't even know now. Steenbecks for editing, and that's where I really learned about making motion pictures. Now, of course, we work with digital mostly, not exclusively, but mostly. Many people who were engaged in the analog production of pictures got lost totally as the transformation, this deep transformation, which very few people have ever really understood, takes place as a digital world comes in. A different set of opportunities, a major closing of a lot of doors. It was as profound, I think, over the last 10 years or so, as the switch between silent film and sound film. In the silent picture era, which produced extraordinary works, well worth looking at, some of the best cinematography ever that's ever done. Some of the most wonderful choreographed shots that have ever been done from silent cinema. But as sound came in, And then we move through from a situation where the directors were primarily putting these pictures together to a situation where the scripts and plays, often bought plays, became paramount. And the directors were no longer the directors of motion pictures in the first sense, but directors of plays, largely from New York and so on, that were being bought by Hollywood. And frankly, these people were out of their depth when it came to using motion picture to its full capacity. They were resented as well, of course, for a long time. But basically, what the key to what I'm trying to say there is, so many of the great motion picture people of the 1920s and earlier lost totally. A book like Scott Fitzgerald's Last Tycoon, a short book, a romance really, probably the most profound book written on the motion picture industry and its transformations. And I can promise you, a lot of directors read it, a lot of writers read it, and it's short, 6 chapters. But there's some profound insights into it about you. So where are you? You're here. I see there's different ages here, and that's interesting. But a lot of you are really quite young, and some of it will already be aware of analog photography and analog motion picture. I'm sure there'll be people here who are. But you're as a group, and if you want to be filmmakers, or if you are filmmakers or whatever, you're going to face this big problem that the world has changed massively. And all the paradigms 10 years ago do not exist, right? And you've got to be smart enough, and I've got to be smart enough, to adapt to these changing conditions and possibly find your own signature of merger between things that you know and things that are coming on, without being bamboozled by the staggering array of nonsensical streamings and all the rest of it, which is so dominant at the moment. So that's quite something I would certainly advise you to be aware of at all times. That adaptation is the primary skill, actually, for any director, probably in theatre as well, actually, for any director.
When it comes to adapting, what would you say would be the best start when it comes to that, or does it totally depend on the person?
Say it again. The best what? Sorry.
You were talking about adapting and so on. Would you say there's a good way to start doing that, or would that totally depend on the person?
I think the starting point is to know it, that this is what you will have to do. Right, the specific path that you yourself might take will be dependent on your own background, your own interactions with people, and so on. But to be aware of it is vital. I mean, I'm in negotiations all the time, and I can tell you that the paradigms have switched so rapidly. But I'm very glad about something. I think that people should study other things as well as film if they want to be filmmakers. They should get a depth of knowledge as best as they can in other subjects. Sorry, that was a question, yeah? Was there a question there? I'll take your question if you want. Well, Sarah, you're still... No, look, I mean, look, my son, who is a director as well now, and by the way, nothing to do with me. I told him not to be. But he went on his own mission. He went on his own journey, but he didn't study film. He studied history, politics, and economics. Actually, is what he studied. And I think the most useful part of all that was the history, and the history has been very useful in his own construction of his own scripts. They're entirely separate to mine. He's from a different world, really. But he's drawn on that as subject matter, as deep subject matter. He's also been working for the BBC in the interim periods between he's putting his films together, and there he's been working on adverts. Actually, he's been doing their adverts for programs, largely for the African region. So the BBC has the world service, BBC World News goes out to different continents, and because he speaks French because he speaks French, yeah, he's able to do the translation that's necessary. So all these kind of things, they're all merged together in some adaptable possibility. But anyway, he's on his own mission, and I'm fascinated. I haven't seen the script. I don't even see the script. I don't discuss the scripts with him. I know approximately what the picture's about. I know what the casting's like, and so on. But he, like students that I talk to, they want to be their own person. They want to do their own thing. Quite rightly too. But history was interesting as a background.
Yeah.
Philosophy is interesting. I mean,
yeah, I was going to say philosophy.
Martin here, who has certainly taken a great interest in philosophy, and he's progressed the relationship between film and philosophy quite substantially. Now, I can show you something which might intrigue you. I don't know. Yes, let's see. I'll give it another minute or two. First of all, are there any questions on what I've just come up with here? There must be questions here.
I feel like I have one where I'm trying to word it. I'm trying to word it in a correct way.
Well, don't worry, just check it out.
No, he was talking about the learning other things and so on. Would you say there are some like subjects that might provide more things than other subjects? Like maybe history provides more than another one, or philosophy provides more than this one, and it's therefore like better to focus on this, or better to educate yourself more on this subject? Or does it really depend on like the film project or whatever project?
No, when I say the film project might come out of that process the other way around. I mean, obviously history is interesting because you've got a lot of subject matter there, stories, whatever you want. Politics is interesting because you might engage in a documentary situation but you've got to understand some of the political issues and the history of that, perhaps. Physics is a fantastic subject to take because you're looking at the nature of the world. Well, you're trying to understand who we are, what we're doing, and so on. And there's great material in there, both in content and in form, and in all the technologies that go around now. So there are many, interesting sets of combinations there. Theatre, of course, is interesting for somebody who wants to, I suppose, direct or produce or production manage, or one of these jobs in film. How many people here are aiming to be directors out of interest? Just put your hand up, then I can have a look. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
If I say like I it's not my path, but I wouldn't mind if I was one. Does that count as a finger?
No, that means you're never going to be one. That's all right. I'm kidding you. But I mean, you'd have to start with what it is. What is the thing directing anyway? I mean, here's another thing I will say to students. I say, look, because I talk with people who want to be directors. Is there a distinction between a director and a filmmaker? Is there a distinction? So you chuck some answers into me. Who's got a thought on that? A difference between a filmmaker and a director?
Just a minute, sorry. I've done a uni course. Sorry, I don't want to sound bad or anything. But isn't a director a role in a film production? So a filmmaker's like different roles or something. It's like a producer, a production manager, a runner, a art and crafty and stuff. Or am I on a wrong path?
No, it's okay. What you're trying to do is break down an industry setup, and it's not bad. I mean, you've got lots of different elements there. It's not the answer I'm looking for at the moment, but that doesn't matter. Thank you for having a go at that. Is there another one? What's the difference? I mean, a film director or a filmmaker?
I want to make my own films, so write them, direct them, and be the filmmaker. So initially, anyway, so I suppose I'll be all three, because it was just me.
You want to be a writer, filmmaker, director, but still we've got to make that distinction between a director and a filmmaker.
I don't know. I would associate a director with somebody primarily focused working with actors. Maybe sort of actor centric, maybe.
I always sort of to the effect something to the effect of like a director is someone who, to the best of their ability, tries to create something that that is a masterpiece, or at least close to what they would see as a masterpiece, or create something that is the best thing they can be. I'm trying to word it in a correct way. Whereas a filmmaker perhaps would be, I'm just trying to make it sound simple, but someone who is just part of the making process when it comes to films, perhaps, or something to that effect.
Okay. Well, look, this is keep this question in your mind. Okay. I mean, I stab at it different ways. Our friend who talked about actors, the distinction I'm going to make at the moment is that effectively a filmmaker will prioritize the mise en scène, the construction of the image, right? So that a filmmaker like Tarkovsky, if you know Tarkovsky, the Russian director and so on, a major figure, did not really direct actors. The actors, though, were actors in it, but the actors were often used almost like mannequins, right? I'm exaggerating to make the point. You understand? I mean, Tarkovsky did understand cinema in some depth, but I would isolate him at this moment as a filmmaker, a great filmmaker, probably one of the world's best ever, really. And he would say that he was, to use his words, sculpting in time. That would be his approach. A director would have to direct actors, and would have to extract the material from the actors and produce the performance. You have to know about the techniques as well, of course, etc., but might rely more on the cinematographer and other people to do the construction of the image than they themselves, whilst they work with the actors. Now, this distinction is very extreme, and it's not the only. I would say everything is a merger of these two, but these are the two poles from where people operate. Now, so if you're going to be a director, you're going to work with actors. Let's assume you want to work with some really serious actors, okay? On the text, for example, a piece of Shakespeare, Chekhov, or something like this. The first position for a director is you better know that text. You better know it really, really well. Because the slightest flaw, if you're caught out at any point not knowing, your credibility will vanish. Can vanish in an instant like that. If you're going to direct a piece of Hamlet, you'd better know this play. You'd better not just know the play, you better know the surrounding elements of the play, its origins and everything else. And then when you talk to an actor about doing it, first of all, you've got something to talk about, and you're also respecting the actor by assuming and giving them the credibility that they themselves know something about this, and this is where we can start to work and build the character from. Does that make sense? I mean, if you're going to work solely as a filmmaker, working with mise en scène, you better, in a way, really know your cinematography, and you better know your sound design pretty well. Because the world is so competitive in this area that there's no real room for amateurism. You might get by doing something on your phone and chucking it in and getting a few viewers, but there's no real room for it because the competition and people really do know what they're talking about. So this is your responsibility to take hold of that kind of thing. If you want to direct, you better know about actors and you better work with them. You maybe even act. Maybe I'm a lousy actor actually, but I have done it and I have worked with people and all the rest of it, of course, for a long time. Anyway, there you go. So it's an interesting distinction for you guys to have a think about what you want to be. Where do you imagine the balance is going to be in these things? What I might do, if the time is such as, so I don't want to just blab on and confuse.
Can I ask a question, Ken?
Which one?
Can I ask you a question, Ken? This is Martin.
Yes, yeah.
I ducked out there because my Wi-Fi collapsed. I had to reboot my entire Wi-Fi. It was not a promising start to digital filmmaking online course, but I'm back with you now. Tell us a little bit about the things that you did on the way to becoming a director. So there's a point in which you make Resistance, and then you go on to start making films in the early days of Channel 4. But there was other kinds of things that you did, working with cameras, working with editing, and this is all in the days of analog. It was kind of as well as the art school training, which is about the image, which is about composition. There's a kind of technical apprenticeship in there as well. I wanted to tell us a little bit about that, your time working for American news TV and that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, obviously I did a lot of these different things. I did study photography in some depth as well, I should add, which is very useful to terms in qualities of light and all this kind of thing. I mentioned working with actors a bit, not just a bit, quite a lot. I did take a couple of positions as an assistant director on some interesting documentaries, actually, and interesting films that were made long ago by a German director called Lutz Becker. I was his assistant director for a while. And so I was getting technical experience, the relevant technical experience of the day, but I was simultaneously reading extensively, which I still do. So, and I wanted to grapple particularly with classical texts, that is, the Greeks, the Shakespeare I mentioned, Chekhov, blah, 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 blah. In other words, I wanted to grasp drama. I wanted to understand what are the mechanisms that are going on inside it without preconception. I personally don't believe, and this you must immediately dismiss when I go as a piece of nonsense, but nevertheless, what I actually believe is that you could spend your life writing a screenplay, which might be a great screenplay, and it's almost certain to produce a lousy film. Or you can produce a rotten script, and in the right hands, it can become a brilliant film. And so I'm very opposed to preconception in these things. I'm very opposed to methods in the construction of scripts, actually, and things like that. And it's never worked for me. And what has worked for me has been the opposite of that. And I'm not the only person, by the way. Quite a lot of people will tell you that. So that's kind of, since you're starting this thing, I would bear that in mind. There's no one way to make a picture. Actually, Martin, there's no one way to do it. But there are many wrong ways to do it. And one of them is to set off with very substantial preconceptions and self-images, which are not true. You're starting at this point. I presume you've got equipment and things like that, have you? You're getting equipment and you're getting cameras and things for this course. This is quite interesting, man. So this is a golden opportunity, isn't it? Really, to make. So I think the most important thing here is you make a piece of work, and without any reference to anything that's been done, do the one that you want to do, and this is your signature. And this signature, that is going to be your name, and you put what you can into it, intensely into it, and if it won't fail if you're intense enough in the subject. So the pathway through, people will tell you very different things. I didn't go to film school. I did art school, but I did study the history of cinema. I didn't go to drama school, but I studied drama. A lot of it on my own, sometimes in engagement. I didn't study history, but I read extensively in history, of course. I didn't study philosophy, but as Martin knows, I've been fortunate enough to work with some of the most extraordinary people, really, in the contemporary philosophical world. I didn't study psychoanalysis, but I have had many exchanges on a psychoanalytic level with practitioners, both in guidance on the work I'm doing and in exchanges about culture itself, the issues of culture itself. I didn't study politics, but I certainly engaged in close analysis of politics, and I've filtered that into my films, certain positions, certain questions, certain. So that's probably the best I can really tell you about where I came from. Every picture I begin, I think is an entirely new one, and you can't repeat yourself. You can't. Oh, I know what to do here, and you just do it. You can't do that. It really is a journey of encounter with things that you have to grapple with, or as I said earlier at the very beginning, of adaptation, of continuous adaptation to changing circumstances and changing thoughts. What I think might be good to do, if Martin wants this as well, I can show you a small piece of film. I can show you the Maximilian film. Yeah?
Fantastic. That I'd chosen that.
Oh, really?
I'd actually chosen, I sent that to Karen for a link to as an example. Yes, absolutely. Show that and we'll talk about
well,
it.
I before this, when you called me, I thought I better have something on hand, and I could just, what you're going to have to do, I will put it into the chat. You will then, you're going to, you know what to do. You copy the link, the Vimeo link, and the password. Remember the password, I suppose, and put it in. It's a very easy password anyway. It'll change tonight, so it's not downloadable, and you can just look at it now. And
can we do it in share screen, Ken?
Why do you want to share it? Why not look at it? What you mean share it? What with the audience looking at it?
If you send the link to Karen in a minute.
Okay. Maybe you got an idea here. Let me see.
It just means
what I must do is, if you can turn the recording off. The reason for that is I've got to be very careful with there's a copyright issue on it, which I'm in negotiation with at the moment, so I can't let it go out. No, thanks. Right, very good. Yes, the recording. Well done. Well, it must have gone off and come on again, Karen. Very good, guys. Okay, there you are. Look, it's a very specific film. Martin was right, really, to select that independently of me. Actually, this morning, I'm just thinking about it because it could open a debate for you about what film is about, really, and how to approach a piece of cinema. The key, I think, also for you guys is to try to see things. I'm sure Martin's going to show you these kind of things that you can't just see anywhere. You don't want to look at them. If they're all over, splashed all over, let's say television or in the cinema as contemporary films, okay, that's interesting. Watch them, but don't take those as your primary guides in a course like this. I think Martin will be choosing some good stuff. How many sessions are there, Martin, on this?
We've got 10. We've got 10. We'll have 10 different.
Yeah, I can imagine. They look an interesting. You look at an interesting, great group. Actually, I'm sure you're going to be. Also, I would actually, possibly. I mean, you've got to think about your collaborations with people. Then you've got to see: are they going to make groups? Are they going to do individual films? How does it work?
Well, one thing at a time, Ken. One thing at a time. Just
can I?
Well, we've still got you. Just tell me a little bit about that as a piece of analog film, and why it would be different from a piece of digital. Why the way you did?
Well, the quality of the cinematography, number one. There is no special effect in this picture. Okay, there's no special effect. It's all physical movement of the camera, and you see, digital media takes place to a large extent in your minds, in the brain of the viewer, who is compensating for all these signals that are coming through all the time. Whereas the analog signal is something you're actually seeing. It's out there. It's not just 1 + 1, 1 + 1, blah 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 many times. It's the same with music. Actually, digital music is without a doubt at this stage of its development inferior to analog recorded music. But of course, it's the modern world, so people are in it, and it seems to be easier. But for those that know about film, if you watch that. I mean, you've just seen it, of course, through a digital format here in distribution terms. But if you see that picture projected, you will know that that is not a digital picture, right? And that's to do with the picture quality. It's to do with the picture quality, the movement, the camera movement, the way that focus is being pulled. those of you who know a bit about this, this is a film that we're working with traveling focus the whole time. That is the focal field. There has to be somebody there operating this, because there are very specific points at which the focus must be lodged in. Otherwise, the action completely moves out because the camera is moving. And in a digital world, you can compensate for that. You can compensate for it, but that is what it is. It's a compensation for something that is actually there. It's real. It's interesting. So that's a difference. Secondly, on this one, we're dealing with one of the great stars of that picture is what we call the grip. The grip is the person who is moving the camera, not the cinematographer, not the sound or anything else. It's the person who's moving that camera. And that person then had to have a very good knowledge of lenses and what was coming into range and so on. And the camera is a long way away from him. It's a good, I think the crane was 25 feet. So he's on the end of a crane, the camera, and he's at this end. After the fulcrum, he's got the weights, and it's his ability to move it. Now, you can nowadays, now we've been doing it even the last few days, move a camera digitally. As well, you can reduce the frame, you can do various things like this. But you will never get the transmittance of values that takes place when that guy, in this case, is moving that camera and bringing it to a stop on a painting and then moving it away. Not shuddering it in, not blah, 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 but bringing it with his nervous system fully operating at the end there to a stop and out again. Now, this is really something. I asked him after, his name was Jagomez. I said, Jagomez, I've been watching you do this. I'm amazed. I think, frankly, it's extraordinary. Your ability to move that camera through space and to arrive at exactly the points without it going all over the show. Okay? How? And then one of his secrets came out. He'd been a football player, and he'd played for Sporting in Lisbon, and he'd actually played for Portugal. And he was in what we might call now a kind of right half position. And his spatial ability, in this case, he was using it with me on a crane, was developed by the kicking of a football and the finding of passes and all the rest of it. I always found that was extraordinary. Obviously, he's a big guy, pretty tough guy as well, I would imagine, but he's a big guy, and he really could move that camera around with a precision that's staggering. I've never met anybody like that since. I've seen many great grips. I've never seen anybody do it like that. And I can tell you, that is from the analog world. That kind of camera movement is from the analog world. A second thing about this is you can, of course, construct backdrops, can't you, for film? We could have done it on this Zoom. I could have played something, perhaps. Yeah, somebody's even put up something up there. Christopher's put up a thing with him on a mountain there or something. I mean, we can do this kind of stuff, right? But when this picture's shot, there's none of that at all. Any object that's changed position has been physically moved. And the knowledge that everybody had to have was where the frame lines were. You might remember the camera goes like this, certain paintings, information, news sheets, newspaper there. When the camera goes back, blah, 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 blah. It comes back again, it's gone. There's another piece of information there. So the film is building its information library, if you like, up, compounding it bit by bit as the seconds go by in the picture. The camera, of course, in the end, goes right through the window of the studio and up and down, right? This is not done by Steadicams or anything. It's done by, in this case, Elsa Rock sat on the end of a 25-foot crane holding the camera. And what happens, and this is, you can dismiss it totally, actually, if you like, but it's something that I'm fairly convinced about. What happens is, unconsciously, audiences pick up the nervous transmission that's going on inside the medium. That is, all these people that are doing this work, it is pre-consciously, really, probably. It's not something you say, ah, ha, ha. That's what happened. You don't do that, but you experience it. And so that's the difference. One of the big differences between an analog piece of cinema and a digital piece of cinema, or digital platform of some sort. Now, some people will contradict me on this, I know, and I'm very happy to take them on and show examples at any point. But the 1871, and Martin shows it as well, actually, is not a bad starting point for that kind of debate. So what are you going to do? This is digital filmmaking you're involved with now. Well, I would definitely study the antecedents in the analog world, because I think the future is a synthesis of that material and knowledge and so on that has gone, and the knowledge and the new developments that are taking place now. In other words, almost between a conceptual base and a technological base. And you guys are in the middle of it. You're younger than me, and this world will belong to you. And you've got to, you will find your systems in it. But does that gives you a taste of what I think? I can tell you, I could talk about this for hours, but it's a taste. I hope that there's some degree of an answer to you, Martin.
Can I ask a question? Just a very quick one.
Yeah, I know you've got a few minutes. I've just checked the time.
It was just
about 8 minutes actually.
How well, it's two parts to the question. How long did you give yourself to rehearse all those movements? And are you a fan of recording your rehearsal in case you get it brilliant and then it's like, oh, actually we've got it?
Okay, all right. Well, what I'll take now is probably counterproductive and counterintuitive, really. Number one, it wasn't, of course, it wasn't how long I gave myself. It's how long the producers gave me to shoot this picture. You understand? Because of obviously this finite amount of money. If I had 10 rolls of film, okay, that means 10 goes at it. Yeah, and it's 10 goes at it because it's the analog day, and I had 3 days to build a studio, because the studio is actually built. It's in the proper location, but the studio itself is built, and to choreograph the movements of the squad and the performers who were holding the rifles and so on. Right. So I had 3 days, and I had to begin choreographing that in stages because it was a long thing, as you can imagine. So, we spend the first day choreographing the first part of it, the second day choreographing the second part, the third part, blah, blah, blah. And all the time working with that cinematographer. And sometimes I'd say, listen, I'd like the camera to go out the window and come around the back and come in again. Okay, maybe I said that. He'd say, impossible, Ken, impossible, impossible. And I'd say, okay, what is possible? And then he'd give me his version of it, and then we'd negotiate it, right? So so I had 10 rolls of film. It's so difficult to do that shot, with all these movements and everything else, that of course, about 6 of them, I'm not going to swear, but I could do completely, okay? So that meant I had 4 left. I had 4 that I'd gone through the whole thing. One of those I found very interesting indeed, but there was a flaw because it started raining and the rain came on the lens and it made it a bit difficult. But it was intriguing because when the camera went out again through the window, to everybody's surprise, because we were so concentrated, there was a whole flock of sheep there. They'd come in from the field to see what was going on. And so, I found it interesting in a surrealist way. I thought it was really interesting. But of course, anyway, the rain went on the lens. The second, so that was 1 that had gone. So now I'm down to 3. I now have 1, out of those 3, one of them, Maximilian himself with the sombrero, was a very fine actor, actually. I mean, he was just being positioned in this piece, but he and I was I was able to talk to them during the course of the shot. So I was able to say, okay, stand, move a bit closer, blah 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 blah, which I was doing. But in this one, when it came to be shot, it was about to be shot. From nowhere, a wind came in from the Atlantic, just over there somewhere, and blew his sombrero off. Okay. Now, I remember I said, listen, Jose, keep going, forget it. Don't go. No, he couldn't do it. He went chasing his sombrero. Of course, that's at the end of a 10-minute shot. He went and chased his sombrero. So of course, I mean, if it was a different kind of film or comedy, it would be even better. Anyway, so I have 2 left, and I have to make the choice between those 2. There's no cuts, so that's it. Once a roll of film is started, if something goes wrong, you got to not throw it away, but give it to somebody, and they can use maybe the other half, but you can't use it in this shot. So that's the answer to that. How long did I give myself? I had a week to shoot it, basically, but that was given to me, and the actual shooting was over 2 days max. The editing, I mean, it sounds like it was an easy thing to edit, but the sound score was very complicated, very, very complicated. And the actors' voices who speak, and they're great voices. One is Lutz Becker, the great film director. The German is Lutz Becker, and he came and did it for me because he could get the voice of Max. He'd heard things of Maximilian. I think there's even he read texts about it. He obviously hadn't heard him, but he came and did it for me anyway. So that's that. And the French guy is a French actor who's a friend of mine. He excellent classical actor. So he came and did the voiceover there. The second part of your question was what?
It was if you were a fan of, well, in general, any of the work that you've done, recording your rehearsals just in case. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Good question. Very good question. The answer is no.
Right.
Because, and it goes down to this digital analog thing again. When you are, if you're directing an actor in film, then of course the director is in charge of that performance, chiefly because they can cut, they can ask you to move around, do this kind of stuff, right? If this actor is going, if you're directing a piece of stage and the actor goes on the stage, as soon as that actor goes on stage, the director's finished, his job's gone. That actor, there's nothing you can do about it, it's there. You understand? Because there's no point of interference during the performance. And I think there's something very particular about that, about the nature of the moment. And all this dawdling around, like, I'll sketch it and I'll film the rehearsal just in case that's better. I think it's a complete dissipation, the concentration required when you really want the one thing. And so my answer is no. And sometimes, by the way, much to some people's anxiety, in shooting pictures, including some of the big ones, I've only taken one take, and I've said that's it. And some people said, I'm sure I could do it better, and so on. So yeah, we'll do it better next time in the next take. This one is finished. Okay. Now, and that sounds weird, but it's not. It's weird for me too. I mean, I am anxious, but I know that. To get a performance like I've managed to get sometimes in some of my pictures, everybody has to feel that. They have to feel they don't know what's going on as well, because they don't. I mean, and I'm trying to hold it all together without necessarily, I'm not Mr. Rational. I'm trying to feel my way through it. And indeed, from the outside, it looks like chaos. I'm sure it looks like chaos. But the performance I managed to get off Domiziana, Giordano in Xena, won Best European Actress, and it won it because we talked about that very question. Right, we're not going to rehearse. We're not rehearsing. We're just going to talk about it. Okay, we're not. We'll talk about it. I want you to work on the voice. You have to work on a voice as well. And I've got one primary direction for you. I need you to break the rule with your eye line. I need your eye line to cross the camera, which it should, in classical terms, it shouldn't do, because I want to exaggerate a sense of nervousness and hysteria. I want your eye line to go like that across. And as soon as you do that, the audience feels slightly uncomfortable, but it was within keeping of the role. I mean, I'm going to do some of those shots we did once. Most of them we did 2 or 3 times. Ian McKellen, who's in that picture, and I've worked with him quite a lot, he and I had a signaling system, which was that I was going to, look, he's a star, and I'm not a star, he's a star. So, okay, I have to be careful on a set. I can't go embarrassing people. I'll tell you where to go for a start, probably. And also, they'll probably never work with you again. But he, I know well. And I said, to him, listen, Ian, if I feel there's a flaw in it, we're not going to do this more than like 3 times maximum, I would think, in this case. Okay, it's a complicated shot, so we're not going to do it more than 3 times. But if I think there's a flaw in it, or if I feel that that you've missed on the text or something, I'm not going to say, Ian, you missed on the text, or it's over the top or something, right? I'm not going to say anything like that. And I was telling the cinematographer the same. I'm not going to say, look, you made a mistake. Okay, I'm going to say, I made a mistake. Right? Look, I've made a mistake here. This should go this way. And when I said that on the set, they both knew that it was either theirs or theirs. Do you understand? But there was no embarrassment about it because the director had soaked it up, which you better do. I think it depends what you want. Kind of there are people that you just tell people what to do. I think if you do that, you I don't know. You'll be dead before your time, I imagine. But so that may be an answer to you, kind of a question for you to think about. Digitally, of course, you will be tempted. You're bound to be tempted to keep everything you've got. You're bound to be. That's an entirely different discipline to making the choice, and doing that choice. And the only point of freedom that you have as a director in a picture is the moment of choice. Not the moment of keeping it all in case the moment of choice. And that involves your psychic processes. I'm talking analytically here, not magically, but psychic processes, bearing down on that moment, bearing down on it. People will recognize it around. That's what you're doing. They may be irritated with you, but they'll recognize it. And then you move on. After all, why do it otherwise, really? Why put yourself through all the pain of making films when you can sit at home, watch a football match, which we won't talk about right now.
Just to conclude here, Ken, to say thank you amazingly for this introduction to all of this, and just to ask you a final question about digital then, because that
focus really,
really one of the reasons I chose that clip or the whole film, the Maximilian film, is that that's a totally different way of working from things that we've done more recently in the using digital technology. It's much more a question of shooting quickly, picking up lots of content, and because the cost is so different, right? It's not here's 10 rolls of 32 mil. Here's practically an infinite amount of data for pennies.
Yeah.
You can do much more at the same time, much less, I guess.
No, that's good. That's well put. I mean, we've talked more about analog and less about digital. I know, but maybe that's a springboard for you to move into digital potentials and so on. Anyway, for the next sessions you've got. But yes, very, very interesting. I find this, and I watch students doing this all the time. They've got digital cameras and they've got cards and they get spare cards, so they shoot. Okay, right. Here's a problem for them then. When 1867 was edited, that was finished over and done with within, I think, a 3-month period. That involved composing the music, bringing the music in, recording the things, everything. It was over and done with within 3 months. If I'd shot 20 hours of stuff, and then I have to go through it and make my choices. We call it host piping, by the way. You host pipe every image you can. It's bound to be good. And the post-production costs could be astronomical. The post-production costs in digital cinema are very high. And where the post-production costs in analog cinema, of course they were high, but they were nowhere near that. You understand? Because you've already got so many choices. When you've got infinite choices, you need infinite time to do that. So that's kind of an interesting difference. And also, actually, Martin, something we've done together, and I think we enjoyed this a lot. We mixed digital techniques with analog techniques. What we did was we used high-level digital cameras, the highest level digital cameras that were available, as they keep increasing, but I think we're on 6K at one time. But the lenses we used were from the 1960s. Do you remember that? You'd actually managed to get them, actually. those extraordinary lenses that The Godfather was shot on. And we hired those in from Pinewood Studios, as it happened, had adapters made so that we could use analog lenses on the digital camera. And the picture quality was significantly different. Maybe somebody sat on the phone looking at it wouldn't notice the difference, but if you were sat in Cannes, you'd know the difference. You definitely would know the difference. And so those super Baltals, weren't they? The Baltal lenses were amazing lenses. And why? Because, and you know why as well? The digital cameras are actually sharper, right? In fact, they're harsh actually, but they're sharper. But the analog lenses, the one we use, the super Baltals, and The Godfather is shot like this. Of course, they're sharp, there's focus and so on, but they also have a slightly softer quality about them. And that slightly softer quality draws you in as a viewer into the dream that you're being presented with. And the digital camera, although the narrative might draw you in and so on, the picture quality will offer a bit of resistance to it. I hope that makes kind of sense. So we've actually, I think, Martin, begun to explore the future. The future will be the synthesis of these two different orders of cinema or filmmaking, because you're going to get bored out of your brains with all these so-called independent films. I mean, you can keep watching them and you go, oh man, another one. I'd rather watch the football match. Here comes another one. or YouTube stuff or whatever else. I mean, how long do you want to live? But a great piece of cinema. That's amazing. Something extraordinary. Anyway, I hope that's inspired you and not put you off, and I hope you're going to be incredibly successful. And you look great. You look a fantastic group, actually. And you've got Martin here. Martin is a man who knows a lot, I can tell you. He knows a lot, and we've discussed a lot of philosophy apart from a lot of cinema, and that's been a great pleasure, actually.
Thank you so much for that, Ken. We have kept you 29 minutes longer than you.
Oh, did I? Yeah, okay. I'm going to run. It's okay. I will run now. Well, guys, have a wonderful evening, and good luck on this course. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely wonderful.
Very much. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So thank you, Ken. Thanks.
I'm out. I think I'm not out. I'm almost out.
Go on, off you go. Off you pop. Right, Ken. In another life, I'm Ken's producer. I spend my life getting phone calls on the way to airports saying, "Can we have the super Baltar lenses?" I was saying, "How much does the super Baltar lenses cost? How much? You're kidding me. You need to lose an actor if you want super Baltar lenses." But we'll have. It was great to have him here. This the time we could do it. We've kind of started in a bit topsy-turvy way to start with something so high end as speaking to a film director like Ken, who comes very much from the tradition of European art house cinema and has won awards at the Berlin Film Festival and the San Sebastian Film Festival, and comes very much from a tradition of European art house. And we'll meet other directors that come from different idioms and different traditions over the next 10 weeks. But it's like suddenly we've been dropped in at the deep end, and now we're swimming, right? Now we're moving. And there's lots of roles in filmmaking that aren't the director, right? There's everything from catering to legal clearances to runners to focus pullers to grips to best boys, everything that we're going to find out about. So what I want to do now is it's 6:30 and we've been online for 90 minutes. Let's have a break. We'll come back in 15 minutes. Come back at quarter. Where we've got to in this opening session is we had a barnstorming masterclass from Ken McMullen.
Oh, good.
We thought we were coming to find out about details of digital filmmaking, and he's just given us an hour worth of why analog is great and digital is rubbish, and why filmmaking is all about ideas and all about stories and all about concepts.
Yes.
The last thing that's going to make you a filmmaker is digital kit, and I think that's a good message. That's a good message to take home.
He's right. A pen will never make you a great writer. It just means you own a pen. And you can get them from bet shops.
That's where I get all my pens.
No, but it's true though. Yeah, the pen will not make you a great writer. Ideas make you a great writer. Life makes you a great writer. Concepts, engaging with people and things and places. That's what makes you a great writer. A pen just means you can put a £2 each way on King Wilson in the 445 at Newmarket. That's all.
Great skill to know whether to put it on King Wilson or not. That's beside the point. And certainly, if a pen would make you a great writer, you know, a 4K iPad with digital stylus certainly isn't going to make you a great writer. These things come from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we do want to do over the next 10 weeks is to give you some practical skills in digital filmmaking. We're going to do that. We're going to go through something each week, a skill in digital filmmaking that you can go away and practice and play with. But in this first week, I think we wanted to very much set the scene of saying it's not about the toys, right? That digital filmmaking is, as Ken was saying, a different paradigm from analog or shooting on celluloid or on what we used to call wet photography. You know, shooting on film. And you can do all sorts of things with it, but you still need the same basic skill set around filmmaking, around storytelling, around ideas, in order to be able to do this. Now that's if you're going to make a certain kind of filmmaker, right? The other thing I want to stress at this early stage of this sort of early part of this course is we're not expecting everybody to be a film director showing the films it can and winning Berlin, right? That's not what this is about. We're going to do a whole lot of stuff, and I want to. What at the end of it, I don't expect you. End of the 10 weeks, I don't expect you to be showing it can, but I want you to be able to present for an interview in the film industry with some knowledge and skills that will get you taken seriously in an interview, right? That's kind of where we'll get to. It would be disingenuous to promise anything other than this over a 10-week online course. But you've got to know, you've got to have this background, this hinterland. And I think what Ken was also saying there was, you know, if you want to do this as a career and it's competitive and it can be precarious as well, then you've really got to love it, right? You've got to love film. You've got to love the image. You've got to have some investment in it as well, and that includes having a knowledge of the sorts of films and different idioms that Ken was talking about. So Carl was a very different kind of filmmaker to Ken. Both Liverpool boys in their different ways. Carl from Bootle, Ken from LS8, right? L8, in his own ways, an art school graduate. Carl was also trained at the art school in Liverpool, so they have that in common. They have their art school training, art school background. Carl trained in design, and lots of the things that we use in ICE, at the Institute for Creative Enterprise, has been designed by Carl. Carl is known for working with the writer Frank Cottrell Boyce on his films, has written the script for two of Carl's features, and has others on slate at the moment. Will we watch? What we're going to try and do? We tried to watch a 10-minute film by Ken over Zoom. Didn't quite work. So what I'm going to do is put in the chat a link to the trailer for Sometimes Always Never. So you can kind of, if you haven't seen it, if you're not aware of it, this is this is sort of, yeah, this is the one, right? This is the this is sort of the idiom, the end of filmmaking that Carl's coming from. And your homework for this week is to watch Sometimes Always Never, right? Is it on Sky Cinema at the moment, Carl?
It is, but it's also on Amazon. If you've got Amazon Prime, it's on that.
Right. There's the link. It's only 2 minutes. If everybody has a watch of that very quickly, and we'll put yourself on mute, and we'll come back in 2 minutes.
What do you do if you've already watched the film?
All right.
If you watched it, brilliant, fantastic.
Because he did it at the BG the other month, that probably a year ago, from top of my knowledge.
Brilliant. That's fantastic stuff. You bear with the rest of us then.
I remember that one quite well.
Very good. That's just the trailer. It's a really wonderful film, and if you haven't watched it, that's your That's part of your homework for next week. Carl, while we have you, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you came to be a film director? What you had a whole. One thing I must say about Carl, if you don't recognize him, Carl is from the popular. Also has a life as the bass guitarist in the popular beat combo the Farm, and has a whole career as a musician before he became a filmmaker. But aside your magnificent career in music, tell us a little bit how you came into film and media.
Well, I started off life as on a community arts project in Bootle when I was about 14. Where I lived, on the estate where I lived, there was a very radical community arts project, which was run by anarchists, communists. There was never a dull moment when those two kicked off. But it was a very, very radical arts project. So at the age of 14, I'd learned to use a 35mm camera. So I could take photographs, I could load the camera, I could process film, I could print. By the time I was 16, I was a fairly accomplished photographer. I didn't know I was. It was just somewhere to go 3 or 4 times a week, mainly because we didn't have central heating. So that was the main reason I went. We didn't have central heating, and it was always warm in that building. So, but by taking photographs of where I lived and the people I knew, and I learned a lot about chemistry, about physics. But the most important thing I learned was about people and the idea that you can document things. Although I didn't realize that at the time, but I now realize that's what was happening. I discovered that even though I had no formal education in photography or politics or sociology, but actually by stealth, that's exactly what I was doing. I was framing the world I lived in. And I became addicted to photography. And then from there, I went to art school. I trained as a graphic designer. So I did a BA and an MA in design, became an art director, specialising mainly in record sleeves, of which I did lots of them. So I did lots of record sleeves. And then around about kind of 94, 95, the world of music, which I was very much embedded in, that bubble burst. Quite spectacularly, I remember, but it did burst. And in those days, I was close to the head of Channel 4, who just set up a new department for independent film and video. And the then head of Channel 4's independent film and video had said to me, given the fact that you've got a really strong background in music, design, politics, photography, you are the archetypal filmmaker. How come you've never become a filmmaker? I said, well, I'd like to do it, but how do you become a filmmaker? And then Channel 4 then launched a series of opportunities for first-time directors. And completely and bizarrely, me and my mate, who wrote for the Sounds magazine in those days, we were commissioned by Channel 4. But the same week they commissioned us, they also commissioned Lynn Ramsey and Shane Meadows and Chris Bernard. So the 4 of us who were kind of new to filmmaking, in my case brand new, we all went off to make feature films. So Stuart Cosgrove was an incredible A&R man, weirdly. So I made this for Channel 4, and then kind of, the thing we made was popular in film festivals around the world and with television. So then Channel 4 gave us more work, then Granada gave me work, and then BBC gave me work, and then Channel 4 gave me work, and Granada gave me work. And then I went on to make I directed about 30 documentaries for television. And then I wandered into the world of feature films, and then made 2 feature films, and fingers crossed, maybe making a 3rd one fairly soon, I hope. So that's roughly how I ended up being a filmmaker. What I didn't do was have a career plan that said, one day I'm going to do all these things and I'll be a filmmaker, which in a way I'm glad in a way, because what it means is in order to make a film, what I bring to the table actually is politics, it's photography, it's design, it's music, it's all those things in life that I love, eventually condensed and then put onto the screen. So in a way, I think if I'd have studied film, maybe I'd be a different type of filmmaker. But I think having that kind of strong visual, cultural background gave me a particular voice and a particular flavour. Whether that's a good flavour or a good voice, you know, only you can decide that when you see the film or my films. But that's what I did, and my life's been a mess ever since.
Tell us about working for Granada and Channel 4, because that's the bit I was trying to get Ken to talk about, and he kind of skipped over it, because Ken worked for CNN on the shift, and he was basically the London editor for CNN back in the day, before there was 24 rolling news in the UK, but it was all shot on analog. The news was shot on film. And very often what they would do was a story would break in Belfast, a bomb had gone off in Belfast or something, and it wasn't possible then to cut to Belfast, right? So what they used to do is send the reporter round the back and stand in front of a wall.
Yes.
Reporting from Belfast, blah, 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 film 5 minutes, turn it round and send it back to the States and broadcast it as so-and-so reporting from Belfast. It's a completely different way of working in now with digital and satellite and all those kind of things. One day, part of the course, we'll need to get Colin McEwen on to talk to us about how he invented digital news broadcasting. That's Colin McEwen of LA Productions, great claim that during the Iranian embassy siege in London, he invented the single handheld camera, right? But anyway, that one's for another day. But I think what I was trying to get Ken to talk about was that moment of apprenticeship, really, in which he spent a whole lot of stuff working in different kinds of jobs, learning how to use equipment, learning how to use cameras, learning how to use editing material.
Well, I think for me, because at a very, very young age, I learned how to use a camera. I didn't think when I was doing that, I didn't think it was a skill. I didn't think for 1 second I was learning anything. I was just having fun. I was out with my mates, getting chased by the police off dock wastelands because they thought we were spies or whatever. I didn't really think that much about it. But now I realised that my kind of grounding in photography taught me a lot about filmmaking. I understand lenses. I understand photography, analog photography. But I think if you understand analog photography and then you move into the world of digital photography, which is what we all do now, a grounding in analog photography is a very, very, very useful set of skills. I understand, say, lenses. And also I understand composition and framing. When you frame, someone or something, the very act of framing is a political comment. And when I say political, I don't mean that as in party political, but as a filmmaker, you choose what you want the viewer to see. So if I wanted to frame one of our colleagues in front of us now, I won't pick on anyone. I could pick on Karen, only because she buys me nice cakes. Or I could pick on Claire Brumby because I haven't seen her for about 20 years. Hi, Claire. Claire knows I talk rubbish, just to make it clear. She knows I'm full of hot air. So feel free to give me a stick, Claire. But if I wanted to frame Karen, for instance, then where do I position the camera? How close am I? How far back am I? What do I see of the room? And when you make that decision, you're choosing to edit the world, which I think is a really powerful thing to do. Now, in some cases, if that person is in a particular landscape, maybe that landscape tells you something about that person or its situation, or maybe it doesn't. depending on how tight you are in the shot, in other words, how close you are to a person's face or how far away you are, again, is a statement. You are saying something. So all those things I'd learned when I was about 14 or 15, accidentally. And then when I started making films, all of a sudden, that set of skills I had as a very young boy all became fluid in the end. It was like, I know what to do. I get why I'd photograph you in that way. I get why I wouldn't photograph you in that way. So it just became natural in the end. But that's my particular flavour in filmmaking. I have a style which is described as idiosyncratic, which I later found out is just a kind of a posh way of saying unemployable. So I've learned. So I'm idiosyncratic, which means unemployable. Well, sort of. So, but it depends on you as a filmmaker, what you want to say. When we mentioned earlier about, what we talked about, kind of digital photography, well, the camera is obviously dead important, but it's nowhere near as important as the thing you pointed at. And it's nowhere near as important as the reason why you're pointing it. Now, you might be taking a photograph of your dog because you like your dog. That's a reason. You might be pointing a camera because you're shooting a scene in a feature film. Well, that's a reason. Think about the reason why you're doing it. Because often as well, a lot of things we do, especially during lockdown, bizarrely, is that we create, or rather our world becomes nothing more than wallpaper. And a good trick is to re-walk a route that you do regularly in your house or in a field or your estate or wherever you live. And if you can see it differently, then you're one step further, really, I think, to making films. If you take a walk and you see the same walk and you think this is boring, I do this every day, it's boring. The secret of filmmaking is to do it one day and go, I see it differently. And that means you're starting to kind of reframe the world. So always think, I think it's a Buddhist thing as well. I think anyone there who may be a practicing Buddhist, by all means, correct me or improve on what I'm saying. But take the mundane and make it exotic. And if you can do that, then I think you're onto something quite good. It's like a mate of mine said to me the other week, he studied philosophy, fine arts and philosophy. He's also a real pain in the arse. And it's forever been barred from my local pub. Having said that, though, he's an incredibly intelligent man who has this desire to empty his head of lots of things. I just wish he wouldn't empty them at inopportune moments or when they become offensive. But the thing is, he's an incredibly intelligent man and he's great at kind of grappling these philosophical problems. I didn't study philosophy. I wish I had, but I didn't. But he did. And he said something to me a few weeks ago. I said something was boring. And he said, no, it's not boring. You're boring. I mean, he is quite rude as well. He said, you're boring. He said, there's no such thing as boring. Only you bring boring or boredom to the table. If you can't see the exotic and the mundane, give up making films. Because what are you? Nothing more than, some academic who sits in his office all day, marking students' work. And he was just saying, there's no such thing as boring. You call yourself a filmmaker and you say that's boring, well, then you're looking through the wrong set of eyes. Change the lens. And he's dead right, by the way. He is a nuisance, but he's dead right. If you see something as boring, that's your problem. Change it. Look in a different way. And yeah, it's a good lesson. He then fell off a chair.
So what, if we were to follow you on Twitter,
Yeah.
Carol,
Yes.
at Carol_the farm, one of the things you'd notice is that Carol has, for the last, what is it now, 120 odd days?
137 today.
137 days, been taking a photograph on Crosby Beach every morning. You want to tell us a little bit about that and why?
Well, I thought during the kind of strange periods we were in, kind of lockdown, which is just an odd thing. Support it. I think it's right, but it's also very odd. So I made a film which was a reaction to lockdown initially with Martin, under the banner of ICE, where I know Liverpool like the back of my hand. I've been hanging out there since I was a young lad to now. And then all of a sudden I couldn't go there anymore. So during the first lockdown, I went there and Liverpool was empty. So all these streets, which were normally full of people and noise and chaos and whatever, that is all gone. It was a ghost town. It was like a set for a film before the cameras arrived. It was a strange, strange place. So I started to photograph that, and through photographing it, I then set up an answer machine. And I got people to ring it to say what they missed about Liverpool. During lockdown, I miss my mum. I miss going to the care home. I miss going to the pub. I miss going to the match or whatever. And then we used these voices and these still photographs to make a film, which has been very successful. I mean, currently it's flying around the world at film festivals. It cost nothing to make. It was all shot on my phone. But it's now got an international reputation, which is a good thing. I'm glad that the film's doing well, but what's more important than the kind of ego trip of it doing well is it's punk rock. That's what it is. It's punk. It's Buzzcocks. It's Spiral Scratch. It's DIY. I can make a film on my phone if I want to, but it's just got to be interesting. And the lockdown film is quite an interesting little film. It's a good concept, and it's travelled really well. So once that was dealt with, I just leave that alone now, and off it goes. And then the second lockdown arrived. So I wanted to do another project, but I didn't want to make a film again. So I went to a place on Crosby Beach, and I was trying to work out what is it I miss at the moment. And what I miss is distance, which is what we all missed. And by distance, that could mean, from your front door to the local pub, or it could mean from your front door to Los Angeles. But the point is, you miss distance. So I just thought, well, what if I went out every day and I took a photograph, which is just about distance? Everything is far, far, far away. And then I'll just see over 100 days, 137 days, whatever. What happens when you take photographs every day? Well, not much really, to be honest. But again, it's going back to arguments about the mundane. If you photograph the mundane, you need to, at some point, make it exotic. So what I then worked out is that where I stand on Crosby Beach, if I draw a straight line, it hits Dublin. Now, I can't see Dublin from the beach, but it hits just north of Dublin. So what I'm going to attempt to do is take all those photographs and hire a billboard, and then put my point of view as I've looked across the sea, and then put my point of view on a billboard just by Dublin, so that people travelling on that bit of motorway or stretch of road or wherever it would be, is they can see what I saw. It's basically an incredibly pretentious art project, but I love it. And there is a point to it. So it is mundane, but by looking at the mundane in a slightly different way, I can do something quite interesting in it, with it, And when you see it as a collection of images, it does tell a story. I mean, they're quite beautiful images. They're all black and white, and they're quite nice landscape photographs. But as a collection, as a cohesive collection of images, they begin to tell a story. Maybe I could make a film out of it. Maybe I can make an installation. Maybe it's a billboard in Dublin. Maybe I'll do a KLF and just set fire to them, which is actually my preferred. I've just realised now that's the one I want to do. I want to do a KLF and just burn them all. So, I mean, I'm not sure quite what I'm going to do, but I don't care that I don't know. What I do know is I want to do something. And having that ambition, that drive, and that sense of, well, I'm excited by it. I'll do something. Because there's no cost involved. It's just me. I go to get in my car. 3 minutes later, I'm at the beach. I take a picture. It's not hard work. it gets me out of the house as well, so which makes the family happy. Oh, you've gone quiet, Martin.
I'm used. What am I?
Can hear you now.
I can't.
We used it again.
I'm mute.
Right, there you go.
Again.
Silenced.
Yeah.
Sorry. So that's in sharp contrast to the story we heard about the producer from Channel 4 says, here you've got 10 rolls of 32 mil celluloid, and once you're done, that's it, your budget's gone, you're finished.
Yeah.
So it's a really different kind of practice as a filmmaker. And apart from the labor costs involved, we did pay some people who were involved in the editing of the film. The more than time cost nothing. It literally cost Carl's time to go around taking photographs, and that's the Toronto Film Festival. That's been it's going to be, well, we can't quite say yet what film festivals it is going to be yet because it hasn't been announced yet, but it's going all around the world. It's just amazing. What I want, just to give you an idea of what then is possible within this paradigm, is I'm going to put a link there in the chat. So it's 8 minutes. This is a lockdown film that Carl's talking about, based upon still photography. So it's not even based upon the moving image. It's making a moving image out of the practice of still photography. So let's just take 8 minutes to have a look at it, and we'll have a talk about it.
So I can make a brew.
You make a brew, Carl.
Okay.
Has everyone finished that now?
Yeah, just finished it.
Yeah, just finished.
Very good. Oh, you can switch your screen back on now.
So what else can
So that, right, so literally, Carl, that was made on an iPhone and a laptop. Yeah.
yeah, see, yeah. That's that was it.
That was it. So we heard previously about why you should buy super Baltar lenses.
You should.
You should. No, you totally should. If you've got a budget, you can totally get super Baltar.
Yeah.
No, totally. I mean, you should, but you don't need super Baltar lenses. That's the, and I think that's the point of more than time. And you don't even need. I mean, you saw in that example, you don't even need to be shooting moving images to make something extraordinary and powerful. You need the response to lockdown in really interesting ways. So I think one of the things we want to think about in the course is keeping it simple, and finding techniques and ways to realize ideas as a result of that. And I think what comes across quite strongly, Carl, in that film and in Sometimes Always Never, that people will watch, is your sense as a designer and as a composer of images.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a trait I have in filmmaking. Is the films I make, I definitely have a look to them. They are very stylized, and that is down to, one is my background, art school design background, plus also my love of design. So I am interested in design. I'm interested in record sleeves, and but I'm interested in the world of art, full stop. I'm often, when I'm stuck, I often just walk around the walk around gallery. I just walk around it. I don't have any intention of finding anything, or there's no goal or plan. I just go and spend a few hours in there, wander around, and it never, ever, ever fails to kind of kickstart. If I get stuck, walk there, spend the afternoon there, and 9 times out of 10, you will think of something. It always works. Don't ever work in isolation. And when these, I've heard it many times, you meet the so-called genius. We've all met the genius. By the way, I'm not purporting to be a genius, just to make that clear for a second. But we've all met the genius who deny any sense of history or being influenced. And it's utter nonsense. Why wouldn't you want to be influenced? I don't get that when people say, oh no, it's kind of, I don't watch films because I don't want to be influenced. I don't look at paintings. I don't want to be influenced. I don't understand that. Why wouldn't you want to be influenced? Even if you don't like something. I mean, I'm not a fan of death metal at all. But, if I was doing something connected to it, whether it was to record sleeves or music or fans or anything, well, I'd engage with it because I'd need to understand it, and maybe by doing that, I'd find something in it which I love, and maybe one day I will. But I'm saying, but if you don't engage with something, then you'll never move forward. And I think with the short film you just watched, and I'm not selling that as being a great piece of filmmaking, by the way. I think it's an effective piece of filmmaking. I think it's stylized, and I think it's a good example of how to make a film with no money that can travel the world. I think it's good at all those things. But what it has going for it more than anything is it starts life with a concept. And if you've got no money but a big concept, it will always work, whether that's in the world of music or in the world of film. If you've got loads of money and no concept, even Hollywood, it just falls apart. So put all your energies into concept, and then the rest will just follow. That's what I would do. And also, when you're on that journey of filmmaking, is I think another mistake which we all do is you always when you set out to do something in film, you always make the mistake of knowing exactly what you're going to do. And I think that's a bad thing to do. What you should do is have an idea, of a gut feeling of what you want to do, and then go on a journey. And on that journey, you'll discover things. And maybe the thing you make at the end of that journey is different than what you set out to make, but it'll be better. And on that journey, you learn something. And that's a good thing. And also failure and getting things wrong is, failure is great. It's embrace it. Get things wrong. Get loads of things wrong. It's how you learn. And it's far better. I would sooner get something wrong than never try it. I'd sooner be embarrassed and humiliated by making a mess of something than spend the rest of my life thinking, I wonder if I could have done it. Could I have done that? Well, I won't try it, because if I get it wrong, I'll look like a failure. It doesn't bother me. I'm not really that bothered by that. So it's like when you start this film course, and as the weeks roll on, the other thing as well is, what is it you love? Whatever it is that you love, find out what that thing is, and then use that to start your journey to tell the story. You might love gardening, you might love rock climbing, you might love football or cricket or whatever it is. Start there. Find out what it is that you love about gardening or cricket or whatever it is. What makes you buzz when you watch cricket? What makes you excited when you look at your garden? What makes you excited? What is it you love? Start there, and then just follow it. Just keep following it, and where it goes, don't worry about it. Where it ends up is where it will end up. Because when I'm teaching, one of the big mistakes in teaching and learning is a lot of young people that I teach want to be Tarantino or Bond or Spider-Man or Batman. They want to make these big budget movies, but they don't have any money. They don't have the equipment. They definitely don't have the skills. They've got none of those things. So when they approach a no money project with the idea of making a multi-million-pound feature, it's going to die before it even starts. It's always a failure. Look at your toolkit. Look what's around you. What can I do? If I've got Brad Pitt and he wants to be in my film, well then that's great. If you haven't, don't chase him. There's no point. So think about what it is you love, and then kind of make your film about that.
As my old friend Joanna Callahan, the film director who I made Love in the Post with, like, it's all about the process.
Yeah.
It's not about the end, and it's definitely not about thinking what you had at the beginning is what you're going to have at the end.
Yeah.
It's all about the journey of discovery.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And contingency involved in that, and the things that you'll discover that you'd no idea that's what you were doing. I have written a book about all of this called Critical Practice, which don't read. It's an academic book, right? But the takeaway line of it is filmmakers must not know what they're doing. Right?
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah.
Fundamental to the creative process that if you knew what you were doing, if you could go from A to Z and map out all those steps and go there exactly as if it was a computer program, that's not making. That's not the creative process at all, right? And I mean, I kind of, when Carl said, we'll do this lockdown movie based upon photographs, I had no idea that's what it was going to be. I don't think Carl had any idea that was going to be. Our only rules were we had no budget, right?
Yeah. Punk.
And we weren't allowed out. That's that.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is, you've got to start with something that interests you, and where it ends up, that's the fun bit. If you do know where it's going to end up, then I wouldn't do it. I mean, to a certain extent, like when I'm shooting a script, then I know what the beginning, middle, and end is because I've got a script. But even that is still so open to interpretation and mistake and failure and surprise. It's still got all those things in it. And when you're watching a film, you're watching it unfold, when you're shooting it, you edit and you're watching it unfold, you begin to realize that, oh, this isn't quite the film I set out to make. But it's good though. I like it. But actually it is slightly different than I thought it was going to be. But that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Hi. When you first made when you first went into town to take pictures and stuff, did you know that you were making a project at that point, or did you just kind of go with it and see what happened?
Well, no, initially I went in to take photographs. Again, coming back to that thing about just being a photographer and knowing that if I don't document it, I'll regret it.
Yeah.
And then, but once I went into town, which maybe for some other people, they wouldn't feel this, but I've been knocking around the centre of Liverpool since I was probably, 8 years of age.
Yeah.
It's a city I know like the back of my hands, but I've never known it to be empty. Even on a Sunday, it's never empty. There's always, someone drinking out of a bottle of cider, or two lads sleeping on a bench because they couldn't get a taxi home. But it's never empty. And also, it was empty of people, but it was empty of sound. That was the other weird thing, because normally when I'm in town, which is a long, long time, is you hear things, don't you? There's people talking, people laughing, there's footsteps, there's just noise. And it was bizarre. There was nothing. Seagulls, bit of wind, but there was no noise. So when I was taking the photographs, I was thinking, it's absence of sound and it's absence of people, and this is odd for me. Yeah. So yes, I took a load of photographs, but they were quite haunting because they were empty.
Yeah.
But also because what I can hear is nothing. So when I look at those images, I can hear that's the noise is gone. So yeah, no, I didn't think I was making a film.
Yeah.
I just knew I had to document it.
Yeah.
And maybe one day I'd do something with them. And then fast forward, not even that fast, but very, very early on, next thing we had a film unfolding, and the next thing it was a film, and then the next thing is in Toronto and San Jose and in other parts of the world.
Yeah, and how do you deal with the distribution side of it? Do you submit it yourself? I just don't know about any of that kind of side of stuff, that's all.
Well, if you're going to make a short film or a feature film, it's exactly the same process. But if you're making a feature film, you will have a very large company behind you who will pay for marketing and promotion and distribution. So that's a kind of different thing. Although principally it's the same, but the stakes are much, much, much bigger. But if you're making a short film, it's very, very easy to get people to see it. There are two brilliant websites. One's called, I'll put them in the chat room in a minute in case you forget. One's called Short Film Depot, and the other one is called Film Freeway. Now with Short Film Depot, what happens is I make my short film, I then go to Short Film Depot, and then I upload a whole load of information about the film, synopsis, crew, photographs, link to the film, etc. It's very boring. But once you've done that once, the next bit is brilliant. Because once you've done that once, you then just hit save. And then from the next day, I mean, even now, like I've had 4 emails this morning sent to this. What happens is you get an email saying, would you like to submit your film to the Asian Short Film Festival 2022? Would you like to submit your film to the Berlin Short Film Festival 2022? And you just click on the email link, click yes, and your job's done. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And then fingers crossed, in a few months' time, then maybe one of those film festivals gets in touch and says, congratulations, we'd like to screen your film as part of the Berlin Short Film Festival. Before lockdown, it would then say, we'd like to offer you one return flight and 2 nights in a dodgy hotel in Berlin. And then you go.
Yeah.
But then lockdown came and arrived, and there's a joke me, Karen, and Martin share, is when I get that, congratulations, your film is in, I always say, here's another place we can't go. There's quite a list of places we can't go. Film Freeway is identical to the process I've just mentioned. The only thing about Film Freeway is they charge a fee. Okay. Now, for a short film, that fee might be £7, or depending on the film festival, it might be £27. Now, if you're, like in my case, because I are producing the film, I can enter it to a number of festivals, and the bill's picked up by Karen. So it's not like I pay for them. Now, in your case, I don't know if you can you, I'm not asking, this isn't a question, but can you afford £300 worth of fees over a 12-month period? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. So that's how I do it anyway. So if you upload your film to Film Freeway or Short Film Depot is a very much cheaper way to do it. And then every time that email crops up, would you like to enter your film too? Just click yes. And then, maybe in a few, yeah. And then fingers crossed, you get an invite to somewhere like Berlin, or I'm trying to think where we've been invited to. Anyway, although it's the Globe, so.
Yeah, okay, cool, thanks.
That's a brilliant question, Stephanie. And we'll look at some more of this stuff in a later session. So we're all it's all about the process, and we're all on a journey, and we don't know where we're going to be in 10 weeks' time. Some of you might be a runner on the next Batman movie when it comes to Liverpool. Some of you might decide you want to do an ME in filmmaking. Some of you might go and win an Oscar.
I want a job in Screwfix.
Carl might be working in Screwfix. No, he won't. Carl will be on his third feature by the time this ends. So we're beginning the process. We're moving forward. I want to say a couple of things. I initially lined up a bit of homework and a slide for you for next week to begin thinking about your own short film to end the course with. But I'm not going to put it up just yet. I've changed my mind. I'm going to do a Carl. Yep. Your homework is to go to the Walker Art Gallery, look at some images. Your homework is to watch Sometimes, Always, Never. Your homework is to watch a Ken McMullen film, or watch some film that you love, something you've never seen before, right? Go and take some photographs. That's what we're thinking about at the moment, right?
Can I just show them something, Martin? Just 1 second, find something.
You better hurry up. I've got to go and play 5-a-side football in 3 minutes. Go on.
Oh yeah, all right. Can I just show you this?
Yeah, good idea.
This is when I made Sometimes, Always, Never. This was my Bible for the film. No offense to anyone is Bible an offensive word these days? Big Bible. Anyway,
with Bible. Carry on.
Okay, this is my Bible. So in here is in here is a load of images. So can you see that, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Now this is call it a scrapbook, call it an ideas book. Whatever.
Mood board.
What do you call it?
Is it not a mood board?
Or a mood board, you could call it that, yeah. It's entirely, different people call it different things. But I carried this with me in pre-production and production and the edit. And it was a way of me emptying my head of all the things I love. So I'd go and photograph things. I'd find it on the internet, steal things from magazines. But basically, I would make and add some notes, an ideas book or a mood board or whatever. But it was a really, really useful tool, because when I was stuck on set or when I was in pre-production and I was trying to communicate with the cinematographers or the set designers or wardrobe or editors or anyone, is I could spend a long time saying, well, I've got this idea, I want to shoot it, and I want to go through, shoot it through a window, and I want to kind of put some steam on the window, and and you have this elaborate conversation, which is fine, not wrong with doing that. But sometimes it's just, I find it easier to say, well, actually, like that. That's what I want to do. And the thing is, when I do that, the people I'm working with, who are all visual people because they're in the industry of film, they get it straight away. So I found that a very useful way to work. But I do that anyway, because that's how I empty my head. I take photographs all the time. I draw a lot, draw badly. I'm addicted to Polaroids, which is a terrible addiction. I think whiskey's cheaper. So I might do that instead. But it's in the price of Polaroids. Whiskey is actually cheaper.
Right. Anyway, I'm going to stop you there, Carl.
All right.
We're going to come back and talk to us more later on. Thanks for sharing all that with us. So first of all, this week I want you to fill your heads. Carl wants you to empty your heads.
Yes.
In your mood board, I want you to fill your heads with images this week. That's all. Before we even get down to thinking about what your short film might be, what the idea, what the concept is, go and look at things. Go and look at things and read things as well, right?
The thing that you love, what is it you really want? What you love? If it's your garden, photograph the hell out of your garden, draw your garden, paint your garden, whatever it is. Find the thing you love, but the thing that you've forgotten to pay attention to, and see it with different eyes.
Right, Karen, can you mute him? Well, I try and draw this to a close. Thanks, Carl. One thing we need to talk about a little bit is next Monday is a bank holiday, and that we hadn't factored that in when we got the green light just last week from LCR to run this. I'm assuming nobody wants to work on the bank, come to class on a bank holiday Monday.
I don't mind coming.
Joseph, Wednesday would be much better. I
think my colleagues are very much of the opinion that they don't want to work on a bank holiday.
Okay. Yeah.
That's fair enough. I can't ask them to work on a bank holiday Monday. So what we'll do next week for 1 week only is, can we do Wednesday, 5 to 8?
I can't do Wednesday.
I can't. I've got a different seminar to go to, the other course.
I'm sorry.
I think I have as well.
What we'll do is, we're doing with all of these is we'll record them, and then hopefully you can catch up before we meet on the following Monday, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit unfortunate next week because it's the bank holiday. So we'll do Wednesday next week. We'll record it, we'll catch it up and share it with you, and then we'll come back the following Monday. But in the meantime, that gives you an extra couple of days to go and look at images and discover the world. Okay. Right, thank you all very, very much. It's been fantastic.
Sorry. Yeah, just like Martin said, we'll record every session. So if by any chance you miss anything, on the following day, once the recording is uploaded, I'll send you all the link, and then you can refer back to it, use it as a tool. And obviously everything's in the chat there and what have you. So, but just apart from that, with it just being the first week, if you've got any questions whatsoever, please just fire an email over. Don't wait till next week. Ask me, send me emails. It's fine. I'm working full time, so I'm available all week. If there's anything that you want to know a little bit more about, or any questions you've got from tonight. So yeah, please just email. Don't wait a whole week to ask anything. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, brilliant, guys. We'll see you all next week. Lovely
Thank
to see
you.
you all.
Lovely
you.
to see you all.
Right.
Ta-ra.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Enjoy your
See you
football.
soon.